how old were you when you came face to face with the realities of racism?
I came face to face with the realities of racism on two very different fronts at a pretty young age. The first is that my family was living in Southeast Michigan, and I was just shy of 4 years old when Vincent Chin was killed in Detroit by disgruntled auto workers who thought that he was Japanese and were scapegoating Japanese for the decline of the Detroit auto industry. And it's not just that it was being reported on in the local news, and my parents were understandably concerned, it's that my family was also experiencing firsthand the racial discrimination and scapegoating of Asians for manufacturing jobs going overseas that had led to Vincent Chin's death. So, for a number of years, we would randomly experience having our windows egged, our tires slashed. People would yell slurs at us. We would get things thrown at our car. We experienced denial of service. And pretty much during the entire Reagan years, we had a protocol when on road trips where we would try not to stop anywhere unfamiliar, but if we had to, my mom would wait in the car with my brother and I with the doors locked and the engine running while my dad would go in to scope out whether a place was safe. And on multiple occasions, it was not. And where it really hit home for me was I think I was about 5 years old, and I was out walking with my parents, and somebody yelled, "Damn J word," at us. And at that age, it made sense to me to yell back, "We're not Japanese." And my dad immediately took me aside and told me to never do that again, because people who would discriminate against and scapegoat Japanese for things that they don't have any control over would do the same thing to Chinese or any other Asians. And I am not kidding. As soon as we got home, I even got the demonstration about how one chopstick alone breaks easily, but how the whole bunch cannot be broken, and that this is why Asians need to stick together. The most harrowing thing that happened when I was 7 years old is we came home one day and there was a message left on our answering machine that was targeting me by name. And I did not understand at that time that clearly bigots were just going through the phone book looking for Asian last names. They had called our number, and our outgoing answering machine message said all of our names. So they didn't know whether I was 7 or 17. It just made it clear that as the daughter of the family, I would be an easy target, and they were threatening SA. And at that age, I think that I didn't even understand a lot of what they were threatening. I just knew that from the tone of their voice and some of what I understood that it was inappropriate and it was scary. And I remember covering my ears and just shutting my eyes and crying and eventually hiding in my room. Now, unfortunately, my parents didn't know how to deal with this, so they dealt with it by really not dealing with it. They erased the message. They changed our outgoing message so it no longer said all of our names, and I think that we even became unlisted in the phone book for a number of years. But they did not tell me that the people who were calling didn't know anything about me. I wasn't being targeted personally. They didn't even know where we lived, and I was going to be safe, probably. And moreover, they never told me that it wasn't my fault. And I think that is when I really started to internalize racism and went through about a decade where I just wished that I wasn't Asian because, in my mind, that would have fixed all of these problems. It wasn't until I was nearly college age that I had an opportunity to meet and hang out with a larger Asian community and really feel comfortable and find belonging there that I even began to start reclaiming my Asian identity. In a previous video, I spoke in depth about the second way in which I came face to face with the realities of racism at a young age, and that had to do with confronting my mom's own anti-blackness. When I started school, her difference in attitude towards my black classmates versus other classmates became very apparent, and it angered me because at that age I already knew what it was to experience racial discrimination that had no basis in who we are as people and was about things that we can't control. So I felt like, how dare she turn around and do the exact same thing to any other group of people? And I also talked about how I was fortunate enough that the principal of my elementary school was a black woman who had implemented a program called Students Educating Each Other About Discrimination. And that is where I learned the tools to identify, discuss, and disrupt all forms of discrimination, including racial discrimination. And I talked about the years of uphill battle that it took to get my mom to recognize and admit to her racism and to begin unpacking her biases, which she eventually did. So it's always interesting to me when I hear white parents and educators talk about how young is too young to introduce children to the concept of race, because the reality for many parents and children of the global majority in the United States is they won't get a choice. For many of us, we will be confronted with the realities of racism at a very young age the first time somebody forces us to experience it.